In the off case that somebody clicks on this video and doesn't know what a nuc is, a nuc, opposed to, say, a package of bees, is a pre-established hive. What that means is the hive is already taken to their queen. The queen is laying and the worker bees are dedicated to her and they've established a hive routine, blah blah blah. Okay, let's move on. First thing you want to do before installing a nuc is make sure everything is set up and where it's supposed to be. So we're going to name step 1 preparation. You want to make sure that your boxes are set up and ready to go. You're going to need your baseboard, a deep box or a brood box, a feeder, a top board, and a telescoping lid. You will also want an entrance reducer and 5 of your own frames. So just have everything lined up and ready to go before you even start your hive. That's going to help make this process really fast and easy. It's going to get your bees in quick and we're going to be able to cover them up really quick. Make sure that you have your feeder ready to go. All that we did, we're doing mason jar feeders in this video, and we kind of did a do-it-yourself version. So we don't have the entrance feeder like a lot of people do. What we did was just taped a piece of mesh over the top board and then poked holes in the lid of that mason jar, and then that's going to be flipped over and it'll allow the bees to come up to the top of the hive and feed on the sugar water in the mason jar. And all we did was 1 cup of sugar and then filled the rest of the jar with water. You will want to make sure that your smoker is on hand, that it's lit prior to starting this installation and ready to go. So you can fill it with pine needles, pieces of paper, shredded paper, just whatever you have to start that'll give it a good smoke. Have that all lit and ready before you're out there installing your hive. And suit up. Make sure any tools that you're going to use are handy. These include things like the hive tool. If you're using a frame puller, which in this video we did not, but I would recommend it for first timers just because it's a little easier to pick out the frames. If you do not have a frame puller, it's not that big of a deal. On to step 2. Preparation is all done, and now it is time for installation. Alright, first you're going to smoke your bees. Lift up the lid a little bit and give them a good little smoke. Make sure your smoke is not too hot because you don't want to damage and burn your bees. Be nice to the bees, y'all. Before you start putting your frames into the deep box, make sure that you've put your own frames, you should have 5, into the box. So leave 1 out and then put 4 in the box, 2 on one side, 2 on the other. The nuc frames are going to go between those. If you leave that 5th frame out, it's going to be a lot easier to get all your frames in there, and it'll leave a little bit of leeway space for you to get those frames in there situated nice. So we'll worry about the 5th frame at the end of the installation. Alright, next you're just going to take your frames out of the box one by one. Start at one end and work to the next end. You want to put them into your box the same way that they are in their nuc box, just so that you don't throw off their process or their groove, because they have an established hive and pattern that they want to stick to. So to keep them functioning and efficient, just make sure that you're putting the frames in the same order that you take them out. It's very tempting when you get your first nuc in to want to identify your queen. If you happen to see your queen, great. It's really hard when you're first starting beekeeping to actually figure out what the queen looks like, to be able to spot her easier, because she is a little tricky. She just has a longer abdomen than most of the other bees. She's a little bit bigger than the worker bee, not as fat and chubby as the drones. She's a little more slender, more elegant, like a queen. But if you don't see her while you're pulling out frames, calm down, horsey. Do not waste a lot of time fumbling with the frames trying to find the queen. You could risk either hurting or, worst case scenario, killing the queen which is not something we want to do when we first install our hive, people. It is important to know that she's alive, that she's doing well, so look for evidence of the queen instead. Evidence is going to be in the form of a good healthy brood pattern. So you want to see a lot of brood cells. You want to see a lot of larvae, little bee eggs. So we installed 3 nucs on the same day. The first hive that I actually filmed is one where we did end up finding the queen. We found it for 2 out of the 3. I haven't found my queen yet, and I'm not worried about it because I see a lot of good evidence for my queen. I have a very healthy hive, and they're doing really well. As you are installing your frames into the hive, make sure that you are scraping off any excess burr comb. This is just going to help them kind of stay within the frame, stay where they need to be. It's going to make it a lot easier for you through the next months as you try to navigate through your hive. If there's a lot of burr comb, all the frames are going to stick together. It's just going to be a mess. So keep that scraped off. During this process, periodically smoke your bees just to keep them calm and wound down. You don't want them to be riled up, but keep in mind that you don't want to over smoke them. So don't get a little happy smoky when you're out there. After all of your frames are in, you're going to put your 5th frame in, and then you want to space all the frames to the center. So you're going to start at each end and kind of make sure they're all snug against each other, and make sure you have the same amount of space on each end of the box. Lastly, you're going to take your box, your nuc box, you're going to turn it upside down and shake the rest of your bees into the hive. This just is really good to get the mass majority of your bees right into the hive so they know where they belong and they can start working in there and get used to it. There's going to be a lot of built up comb on the sides of the box, the burr comb that you scraped off of your frames, so just set that all to the side of the hive because they're going to clean that off and use it in their new little hive home. Lastly, you are going to cover your hive. So you want to put that top cover on, and what we actually did that we'll show in this video is we just put it right on top. You can do that, but it's probably a little bit safer to start at a corner and slide it onto the hive very slowly because it gives bees a little more time to move out of the way rather than risk squishing a handful. So after that top board is on, you need to place your feeder. So whether you have a feeder that goes on top at the entrance or just right on the top board like we did, go ahead and put that on. We're putting a second box over our feeder just to kind of cover it and hide it and make sure it doesn't tip over. So you don't need a second box right up front. You don't need a second box until you're going to put that on your hive in about 2 weeks is about the time depending on how fast your bees get going in there. My bees only took about a week before I needed to put that second box on because I had used frames that had built out comb. So if you can use used products, they take to it a lot better. They're going to be 5 steps ahead of where they would have been with brand new frames. So again, the second lid that we used is just to cover the feeder. That's the only purpose in this video. You're going to cover your hive with that telescoping lid. Now you want to place your entrance reducer. And if you look at your entrance reducer, there are 2 different openings. So there's a wider opening and a smaller opening. We opted to put it on the smaller opening just because we want them to get acclimated to their hive and encourage them to stay in there for a little while. So for the first probably it was about 4 days. After they've been in the hive for a few days, then you can switch it around to the bigger opening to encourage them to get out and start collecting the pollen, doing their work, giving them easier access to outside their hive. You're going to want to just check on your hive and make sure that it's doing well every couple of days. Now when I say check on your hive, I'm not saying to get in and look at all your frames every 2 days. You want to leave them alone as much as possible. So just walk by your hives and then check on the activity and check on your feeders. Make sure they still have a lot of sugar water because they're going to need some substance up front while they learn the area, if there's cold days, whatever. They need a little bit of something. When we installed the hive, it was kind of a windy day, and then the next 2 days, 2 to 3 days were kind of rainy and cold, and so they weren't able to get out much, and so it was really good to have that feeder on there. Check on activity, check on your feeders, throw a little do not disturb sign on there just as a reminder, and walk away. If you have built out frames like I did, then you're going to want to check on them in about a week, because you don't want them to swarm and leave because they've outgrown their new space. If you have brand new frames in there, it could take up to 2 weeks. So you can check on it in a week, see where they're at, and decide how much further to go from there. Every time you check on your hive, try not to jostle it up too much. Just peek out 1 or 2 frames until you see what you need to see, and then leave it alone. Let them be, let them be. Did you get my pun? Alright, that's it. I hope this video was helpful. If not, go ahead and give me a thumbs down. Just kidding. Why would I even say that? I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please give me a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, let me know what you think about this video, and we'll catch you on the flip. Happy beekeeping, y'all.